Welcome back. Glad to know you are still with us. This is NTV Weekend Edition. Now, the Kenyan police are investigating the death of over 50 people who starved to death and were buried at a church near the coastal town of Malindi. The shallow graves are in Shakahola Forest, where 15 members of the Good News International Church were rescued last week. Now, police have since arrested church leaders Ezekiel, Odero and Paul Makenzie Nthenge, who allegedly persuaded their followers to starve for 40 days so that they could go to heaven. Now, to help us understand this situation, we do have a researcher in the subject, Francis Tucungwirwe, who is going to be helping us to understand what exactly drives people into actions like these ones. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Thank you.
Yes, so starting us off, first of all, what drives people to actually be duped in such cults, and is it desperation that drives people to believe what they are told, or is it just that people are gullible?
Well, thank you. I have been researching on extremism of all forms, political and religious, for some time. When you look at particularly the issue of religious extremism, it has categories. There is when some of the extremist pastors target like the weak, the poor, the vulnerable, and manipulate, take advantage of their problems.
Because they're desperate.
Because they are desperate. So somebody tells you, you come, we are going to give you blessings. You sell your property and come and bring everything to me, and then we get blessings. So they keep bringing them closer. And this hasn't, for purposes of context, this hasn't only been happening in Africa or in East Africa for this case. If you go back, like even in the US, 1955, Reverend Jim Jones mobilized the people in his People's Temple. And you know, they normally use very strong names, People's Temple. And he mobilized the people for about 25 years. When there was scrutiny in California, where he was operating from, he relocated to Guyana. When he reached in Guyana, there were some defectors who went back to US and said, but people here are rehearsing to commit suicide. Then one of the leaders went there with a helicopter to check on them. When they reached there, they shot them, and immediately they had a drink which had been induced with cyanide. 900 people took it and died. 900 people in Guyana, in the USA, People's Temple. 1978, another group came up, led by Apple White and some other lady called Bonnie something. By 1978, 1996, they also committed mass suicide. They dressed the same, took the same food, and all of them were found dead in the US. That is 1996.
We also have similar incidents here in Uganda.
Yeah, now we come to Uganda, March of 2000. Chibwetere had started way back also in the early 80s. But the only Chibwetere, I have written something on what happened in his place. So he also mobilized the people, hoodwinked them to sell their property, and especially the poor. Eventually, he told them to sell their property. He reached at the point of even telling them, don't talk to neighbors. Like if they would go to the market, they would only use signs. So it tells you the power of faith and the power of religion and faith. When you believe something, especially religious, that's where we call in the state.
People go, when they believe in something, people go above and beyond to actually, you know, try to fulfill what they believe in.
What they believe in.
Now, looking at your book, the title of the book says, "Be careful, be careful."
Yes.
What are some of those telltale signs that can help people probably get to know that this is something wrong, or this is a cult that I am getting myself into? What are some of those signs that people can read and tell that this is here? There is something missing.
There is something happening. If you look at, like for instance, Makenzie of Malindi, the case in point of Kenya, he was telling people, he was arrested in 2017. for telling parents not to take children to school, that education was satanic. Then he also was saying that mothers should not deliver in hospital, that those who even deliver should not take children for immunization. He was arrested. Then, as you know, these pastors sometimes also know how to get politically connected. So he was later released. He was not kept in prison. Then he started all over again and continued. Even as recent as March, Makenzie was in prison. He paid a bond of 10,000 Kenya shillings to be released. When he was released, he had already, this mass starvation had already started. He had been burying people silently in the forest. So now what surprises you is where between Makenzie, between these extremists, where does the state come in? Between the flock and the shepherd, what is the role of the state? Because somebody to reach at a point of taking people for mass starvation, having the convenience to bury them, and then nobody notices, is real an issue where our governments need to intervene and regulate. The space between the flock and the shepherd should really be regulated. Because I normally tell people that religion, like in East Africa, is a highly, if we were take it as a commodity, is a highly consumed commodity. It's a very highly consumed commodity. Like in Uganda, we don't, in most families, you can't eat without prayer. Your children will remind you, please pray that you are going to eat without prayer. When you drop children in the morning at school, they say, God bless you today, Daddy. That's how close we are to God. So that relationship, when abused, can be very dangerous. And I have even been telling Ministry of Education, if we teach children in school, which is very important, that religion is important, that it was bad, because religion helps us to develop values of honesty and so on. But education system also must take responsibility to warn, especially like in the contemporary world, where we have evidence that when abused religion can be very dangerous. Like you see in the case here of Chibweteri, over 1,000 people killed. Somebody just hid there in Kanungu. You see the case of Makenzie, over 20 years, because he started in 2003, 20 years praying with people's minds, and eventually now he has killed many people. Like I gave you context, they keep growing. Now, from your research, what do you think motivates leaders of such cults into actions that eventually cause doom to their followers? What do you, like, you've done the research for some time, what do you think runs through these leaders' minds for them to actually come out and ask their flock or their followers to do things that are extraordinary? In most cases, it has all to do with selfish interest. Somebody is looking for money. Because now look at Makenzie. If he was not eating, Pastor Makenzie of Malindi, he would also have died. So for him, he was eating. He was eating. How do you tell people to starve in order to meet Jesus? When for you are not eating, don't you want to meet him? When for you eating. And remember, by the time they joined him, I was listening to the story of a family who lost a relative. They normally you have sold everything and you take to this person. So you are not eating, but you are telling people that please, for you, don't eat for this number of days. We are going to meet. We are going to meet with Jesus. So it has to do with selfishness. It has also to do with sometimes extremist ideology. Somebody can be exposed to extremist ideology, but also they take advantage of the laxity of the state. The state doesn't regulate the relationship between the flock and the shepherd. Because of the constitution clearly stating freedom of, worship. Yeah, freedom of worship. But like I told you, religion is like a consumable commodity. Like now we have a right to food. But we have UNBS between to regulate what we eat. You don't produce any food and you put it on the market. So between the flock and the shepherd, the state really has to monitor the space. Here recently in Uganda, between 2000 of Chibwetere and now, recently we had a case of people fleeing, I think Serere, some parts of eastern Uganda. They traveled to Ethiopia. To Ethiopia to flee a possible doomsday. But where is the doomsday? And when you hear the story, somebody had already mobilized, they had sold their property, causing poverty and more suffering to these vulnerable people. In Mtiana also, some years, I think last year, there was a group which was linked to a Nigeria cult where somebody was gathering some children in a house. He was arrested by police. So how do you think we can, these people can be helped to get out from such scenarios they have been? What do you think can be done to help them? First of all, one, like I said, we have to take religion seriously and regulate it, because it is something we consume seriously, especially in Uganda and the whole of Africa. It is now you drive between your home and your workplace, you will see how many people you will find in church praying. You drive lunch time, that is in the morning, you will see how many people you will find in the lunch hour. And then those who go at night, sometimes even families get problems. The woman is going for overnight, then the man has just come, then there is confusion. So in between there, the state, especially now that we continue getting these challenges, the state must intervene to put some regulations, monitoring regulations, and some standard. Aside from the regulation, how else can we, these people be helped? The education system. Education system teaches us that religion is important, but it should also teach us that if abused, it can be dangerous, especially with the experiences now we have. So we should have, especially children are normally taught about the Bible from P2 to P7 and so on. So there should be some component that teaches, please, these are the characteristics of a dangerous. If a pastor, if you hear your mother and parents saying they are going to sell family land, they are leaving, they are going to go, be warned. So education system must help. Then we need also strategic sensitization. The leaders must sensitize people about the issues of cults. So in your book, does your book highlight some of the warnings? The book highlights the warnings. By the way, this is, in education, they call it a reader. This reader is even approved for upper primary in Uganda. It is approved by NCDC, the National Curriculum Development Center, as a reader for upper primary. So it highlights the characteristics of a cult. Which includes? Yeah, which include like somebody telling you, leave your home. If somebody tells you, leave your home, don't eat, come to church, I don't take coins, God doesn't like coins, he only takes. So those futures that you normally see, you pay for the blessing. So such that children have a mindset that helps them to tell a cult. Yeah. And it is like you really see the trend. You wonder, in Shakahora, where were because the structures of government in Kenya are like for Uganda, how can somebody have the convenience of putting people in a forest, of convening people in a forest, isolating them first, starving them to death, convincing them beyond. Some of the people who were even rescued from the cult have been blaming police for denying them chance to go to heaven. Now, just like that example from Kenya, there have also been some sad and very extreme examples in Uganda. Like you have mentioned the Chibwetere. We've also seen the people from Serere moving to Ethiopia after selling everything.
Do you think there are some lessons we can pick from the situation that happened in Kenya?
Yes, we can pick, because for us here, the prevalence has been higher in Kenya. If you check the history of incidents, the prevalence here has been high in Kenya. So we really, the government has to now, given, like you have said, the issue in Eastern Uganda, people fleeing to Ethiopia recently, then they say Shakahora incident. Government has to come in, put a standard, like I said. There should be a standard for churches. And then also strategic monitoring and sensitization. Don't hoodwink people, don't take away people and keep them. Because we wonder, where do they get the convenience to have people? The ideology they have, their tricks they have, but to escape the state and you have the convenience to starve people to death is an issue where really the state also has to be blamed. Like you see in Kenya, the senators are wondering, everyone is wondering.
So as we conclude this conversation, you have emphasized the point of the state coming in to regulate. And I would like to ask you, in your parting shot, how much do you think is too much regulation? How much should the state actually be involved?
It actually doesn't need a lot of resources, doesn't need policing. You don't need to deploy within church. It is just community policing. So it is just basic. You can even use basic intelligence, basic community intelligence. What is the pastor saying? What is that? So the police can just monitor. Okay. And you can tell when somebody is isolating people, when somebody is tending to an extremist direction and taking people, the characteristics always come out. So that's where we should put emphasis on the education system, sensitize the children, and then we really enjoy freedom of worship without killing people and humiliating the name of God.
Well, thank you, Francis Tucungwirwe. He is a researcher in the subject of extremism, helping us to understand what prompts situations when it comes to religious extremism. Of course, with the example of Kenya, where more than 50 people had to lose their lives after they were told to starve for 40 days as a way to lead them to heaven. Well, that's it for Talk of the Nation. We take a break, but NTV Weekend Edition continues shortly.